Okay, I would like to welcome everybody this evening to the first public open house for the Birch Road Phase 2 improvements. Thanks for taking your time this evening to come to this meeting. I know it's real sunny and lots is happening, but we're grateful for your time that you're going to spend with us tonight. So thank you. My name is Holly Spoth Torres. We'll do a little bit more introductions later. So everything we're going to do tonight, we're going to go through some introductions of the project team. And tell you a little bit how to sign in, which we normally do when we're in person. We're going to go over some meeting procedures and etiquette. We're going to kind of have two different presentations. One is going to be from the road board itself, with a little bit of context and background for the project. And then we'll have the design engineers give a project presentation. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers and some information on how you can continue to stay involved and submit comments. So I'm going to introduce I'm going to have the project team introduce themselves. I don't believe we have Maury Robinson here tonight. Do we? Maury, are you here? No. So I'll introduce Maury on his behalf. Maury Robinson is the project manager for the municipality of Anchorage Public Works Administration, and he's the municipal contact for this project. I'll have Brian. Why don't you introduce yourself next, please?
Hi, I'm Brian Heffler. I'm the chair of the Mountain Park Robin Hill RRSA Board of Supervisors, and I'll be speaking here in a little bit.
Go ahead, Justin.
Hello, my name is Justin Keene, and I am the design project manager, and I work for CRW Engineering Group, and I will be going over the project presentation after Brian tonight. Rob?
Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Burdick. I am also with CRW, and I will be the project design engineer and doing the detailed design for this project and trying to figure out how to make it all work.
Okay, and my name is Holly Spoth Torres. I'll be doing the public involvement and stakeholder engagement for this project. My colleague Michelle Farabach is also on the line tonight. She's behind the scenes making sure everything's running smoothly. Okay. So normally if we're all in a room together, you guys, we all sign in at the front, right? We can't do that tonight, but it's still important for us to have a project record. So I can download a meeting attendance report, and I'll be doing that. If you think we don't have your email address and you want us to have it, you can send it to us in the chat. The people who are on the phone, I might ask, if you're willing, I would love to ask who you are so I can start to put names with numbers, if that's appropriate. The person at 242-4288.
Yeah, I'm
go ahead.
Yeah, 907-242-4288.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm John Hester, Hester, and I live on Crestview, which is just right southeast of where you're talking here. I mean, I could about throw a rock and hit the road.
Thanks so much. Who's at 345-2257?
John and Nancy Todd.
Hi, John and Nancy. I met you this week. It's nice to see you.
And we're also on Crestview.
Okay. And who's at 748-4351?
My name is Kim Smith and my husband is Jim.
Okay. Thanks for taking the time to do that. That helps us with our project record tons. So
and we live on.
Okay. Next slide. Okay, so meeting procedures and etiquette. I'm just going to go through this quickly. During the presentation, please keep your microphone muted. That helps. See if you can. It helps with the background noise. Okay, so if you're on the phone, you mute by pressing *6. You also use *6 to unmute yourself. Honestly, it's really fun to see everybody, but during the project presentation, we ask that you keep your video turned off. it helps people concentrate on the things that we're presenting. When it's time to talk and ask questions at the end, we're happy to have you turn your video back on. Absolutely. So throughout the presentation, you might have questions. We're not going to be stopping during the presentation for questions, but if you think of things that you want to ask during the presentation, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. When we get to the Q&A, I'll go through the chat and answer them in that order, but also know that you can come off mute and ask questions at the end as well, okay? And again, I'd just like to remind everybody, just keep in mind that the meeting and the chat are being recorded. We like to have this as a resource for people to watch later. A lot of people like to do that. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to pass it off to Justin. Oh no, I'm going to pass it off to Brian. Sorry about that. Brian's next.
Thank you. I knew what you meant. I am Brian Heffler, and for those of you who may have just joined a little bit late, I am the chair of the Mountain Park Robin Hill Rural Road Service Area Board of Supervisors, and I'm going to share my screen here right now. Hopefully you can see that. And I have a little presentation put together here with the background and context, as Holly had mentioned here a minute ago. We are a 5-member board. I myself have been on the board for over 25 years. I'm actually not even sure how long, but it's been quite a while that I've been involved with the board here. The other members of our board are Eric Emerton, who I know is on the phone this evening, Colin Leary, who may be on the phone. He was traveling, I know, and Tom Bassler. So we do have one vacancy right now, but we do have a 5-member board. A couple of things I would like to point out. First of all, we are a rural road service area, not a limited road service area. And the difference is a limited road service area is limited to maintenance only. A rural road service area is able to do construction projects such as we're talking about here. So that's a really important distinction right there. You can see, there's Birch Road, right smack dab in the middle of our road service area. I suspect a lot of you have seen this figure before, and if you haven't, that is what our service area looks like. We have about 7 miles of road. Interestingly enough, Birch Road itself splits us between the Hillside Community Council to the east or on the right, and the Huffman O'Malley Community Council to the west or on the left. We also have a little appendage down there below DeArmond Road, which is in the Rabbit Creek Community Council area. So we're really in 3 different community councils, primarily for this particular project. It would be Hillside and Huffman O'Malley. Our annual budget is about $150,000. And I might point out as well that we are also a aspect of the municipality of Anchorage. Everybody on the board is an elected official. You may have seen if you voted in the election last week, Colin Leary was up for election again, and he was voted in as a road board member. We are sworn in, and we are officials of the municipality of Anchorage. We're like the assembly in that we're politicians who are voted in, but we're also a little bit like the administration in that we have operational responsibilities administering our $150,000 budget to provide services in our area. So we're a little bit of a hybrid between those 2 different functions. We do have a long history here of working on these issues. I mentioned I've been involved for over 25 years, and we do look for, and I coined the term context appropriate solutions for the sort of things that we have to deal with. And as everybody knows from this time of year, there's a lot of potholing and runoff all over the place. And it's just a real challenge with our roads trying to deal with everything we have going on right now. So Birch Road. This is what we're coining. The current project is the phase 2 improvements. You may recall, if you've been around for a little while, we did phase 1 improvements a number of years ago. That was on the northern section. I don't have a perfect little picture of it here, but I do have a cover page from the bid specs from back then in June 2012 when we were going to construction. That was from Huffman Road on the north down to Beverly Drive, or really kind of Penny Circle right in there. About 1,200 feet of roadway that we reconstructed at that point in time. Long process from when we began planning to when we had shovels in the dirt, starting construction. We began in 2005 and construction began in 2012, dribbled over into 2013. And it was a pretty big undertaking on our behalf. The total cost, to my shock, was about $1 million. And there were just all kinds of issues that we had to deal with at that point in time that we were finding out about as we were going through the studies, and people or the engineering team was helping us work through all the design challenges that we had. And I do recall back at that point in time, one of our former board members driving down that road after it was done, and he said, "Man, this feels like $1 million." And sure enough, for good reason, it was $1 million. Phase 2 is what we view as a continuation of the phase 1 work. There you see it, and we'll have a better close-up of this figure later on in the presentation when Justin from CRW is doing his discussion. But you can see it kind of in the big picture: Beverly Drive on the north, down to Calgin, Naknek on the south, along Birch Road there. And if you take a look at where the road is, the red line is just a box to show you where the project is. That doesn't really mean anything other than that. There's where the project is. The black lines are the property lines, and you can see how the road kind of meanders back and forth a little bit. And again, Justin will talk about this a little bit more, but we don't always stay perfectly in the right of way, although we're not too bad in there, as you can see from that figure. So continuation of phase 1. Down to Naknek, Calgin, about 1,700 feet of roadway. So that's something like 40% longer than we did in the phase 1 improvements. And we did begin scratching our heads and thinking about this back in 2018 when we were thinking, one of these days we're going to need to take a close look at how we're going to fix the lower part of Birch Road here. So what was the purpose and need as we were looking at that section of road, thinking about what we wanted to accomplish or what needed to be accomplished, really? Better road conditions and traffic flow. We get a lot of complaints about that section of road. It's difficult to navigate. It's hard on your vehicles. There's a lot of wear and tear, and just generally improving the driving through that section of road. Driving safety, huge part of that. Sight distances, passing lanes, and the like. Just having a safer drive through there. Interestingly enough, we don't get too many recorded accidents in there because I think everybody has to really slow down as they're going through. There have been a couple of them reported over the years that I'm aware of anyway, but just making it a safer drive through there is important. Emergency vehicle access. Unfortunately, and really tragically, we had a house fire over in my neck of the woods here last fall. The roads are in a little better condition over there. At one point in time, there were 10 different fire trucks and other emergency vehicles that responded to that particular house fire to get in there and take care of business. If that had been over on Birch Road, I don't know what they would have done, because it's almost impassable for the big vehicles like that, let alone having them stacked up and able to respond to a fire in that area. So I do worry about that, and having better access for both fire trucks, ambulances, and the like. Similarly, wildfire egress. What would happen if there was ever a hillside wildfire? What would we do? There's a lot of dead spruce bark beetle trees out there on the hillside right now. I think many of us remember what happened with the McHugh Creek fire down just past Potter Marsh here a few years ago. That was migrating at one point in time toward the hillside. What if it had really gotten in there and taken hold? There was a big fear whenever it's dry, really even when it's not dry, that a wildfire could really take hold and race across the hillside. So how would we get out? How would we be able to evacuate, be it to DeArmond Road or over to Huffman Road? Improving that ability is one of the big initiatives of the municipality right now, making sure people have a way out. Drainage improvements, that you can't fix the potholes till you fix the drainage. So we need to do something. Everybody knows how the water just flows right across Birch Road, particularly in the low point in there. So we need to work on that. Snow removal, a heavy snow year like we just had The snow is very difficult to get off the road in that section. The road can really narrow. It would sure be a nice feature to be able to move that snow back and off the road so people can get by in the wintertime. It really helps in the spring snow melt too, if the snow is really pushed back from the road and can drain properly into ditches and be channeled away from the road instead of onto the road. And then really last but certainly not least is trail connectivity and safety improvements for the trail. The bike trail along there is worn out really. It's not in the best of shape. The road crossings are really suboptimal. And while we're working on the road, we should be able to work on the trail as well. So that was when we were coming up with a list of what we really wanted to accomplish in here. That was what we came up with. So what have we done so far? If we've been working on this since 2018, what have we done? The first thing we did was a little drainage evaluation in the low spot. We thought, well, why don't we have a little bit of money for an engineering study. Why don't we take a look at that low point and try and figure out what we can do with the water down there. Turns out when we started, looking into that issue, CRW was our engineering firm at that time. Actually, they have been all the way through. And we really quickly realized that we needed a more holistic approach on Birch Road from where the phase 1 improvements ended at Beverly all the way down to Naknek, and look at a corridor rather than just a little block section of Birch Road. It really had to all tie together due to, you saw earlier how the road just kind of meanders and so forth. How are we going to design that all together? So we commissioned a so-called design study memorandum. You can see that was completed, at least as a draft, in June of 2020. For those of us who aren't in the business, I call this 35% design. That's how I think of it, is doing that initial work to look at that whole corridor, look at options, look at what the big design, challenges really are. And that was what CRW did in that particular study. We had a lot of comments on the draft, which it really ended up, we never did finish the draft and turn it into a final. We didn't see a point in that because we had so many comments on it. What we did do as a result, however, is 2 additional studies. You see the next 2, the geotechnical engineering report. One of the things that CRW found out or identified as a need is that we really didn't have good data on the soils in the area. I think everybody from just putting in septics and so forth can take a pretty good guess as to what the soils are like, but really we didn't have any quantitative data. So we commissioned the engineering firm of Shannon and Wilson to go out in the fall of 2020. You may have seen them out there working, poking holes in the ground and taking samples, really with 2 objectives. One is to find out what kind of road base we had, just in terms of, is it good or is it bad soil? But also, what kind of percolation rates? Just as with your septic, we need to percolate the water into the ground. How is that doing in that section of road? And again, I think everybody can take a pretty good guess. Not very well is the answer. And Shannon and Wilson came up with the data to support that. So they put that report together and finished that up in May of 2021, about a year ago. Once we had the initial data, we had CRW take a look at the stormwater drainage in that area, and they did an initial analysis, again, as a draft, because there were so many questions about, what about this, what about that? So we have all of that information we've gathered so far that we now want to turn into the next phase of the design. The early cost we came up with was about $2.7 million. Again, a little bit of a shocker. It's like, how is that possible for 1,700 feet of road to be on that order of magnitude? And I really kind of questioned that cost and dug into it. So what again, me as a layman, the road board guy, what I really came up with is the big drivers on the cost. First of all, the road is not constructed to modern standards. The lane width isn't proper. You can hardly even pass in the winter time down there in some sections of Birch. Sight distances, you really can't see very well. The ditching isn't right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And interestingly enough, again, as we sort of dove into this, one of the things we realized is that our choices here really are, and it may not be quite this black and white, but I'm going to portray it that way. It's either do nothing or build a modern road to current standards as required by the municipality. And there's really not any gradations in between those two. So either we do it all or we do nothing is sort of the impression I've been left with from the municipality of Anchorage. Is there a little bit of wiggle room on the do everything end of it? Yeah, there probably is, but what we need to do, we found out, is make our case as to, well, if we can't quite get the right, say, ditching along this section of road, what kind of variance can we get? But the onus is on us to prove that that we can't do it. So big cost driver is building it to modern standards. The poor road base, we found out on phase one, we had to dig up on that section of road. 2 feet down was all we could really afford. They recommended 4 feet, but we couldn't afford it. So we dug 2 feet, pulled all that poor road base out, brought in new material. That was very expensive and it was a big driver on that cost. Drainage solutions, that low point in Birch, we have yet to come up with an ideal solution and an easy solution for what we can do there. And CRW will talk about that here in a little bit, but that is going to be expensive and that is going to be a driver. Utilities are everywhere. It turns out there's fiber optic all the way through this right of way. I'm not even sure who owns the fiber optic, but the onus will be on us to move it out of our way. That is an expensive undertaking. Chugach Electric, if you've driven through there, you see their utility lines. We need to move those. I think NSTAR is in there, probably GCI too, but they all need to be moved and they're all our burden to take care of to relocate. One of the aha moments that we had when we did the early studies here of phase 2 is that the road right away actually narrows from 80 feet. It's 80 feet. I think the dividing point is Bristol Drive, and north of that going up to Huffman is 80 feet wide, but south of that from Bristol down to Calgin, Naknek is only 60 feet. It's like, didn't think of that one. So it turns out though that 20 feet we gave up in terms of road right away is a trail right away. The trail right away, for those of you who are interested, and we'll get into this in a little bit, is on the west side of Birch Road, which is the opposite of where the trail is right now. So one of the things we're likely to take a really close look at is moving that bike trail from the east side of the road over to the other side of the road, because we can only build a trail there. We cannot build a road in that right of way. And then the last thing I wrote down on this list here is really, I'm calling it elevation difference across the right of way. And what I mean by that is we have to tie in all the roads. You have Bristol, you have Ridgeview, you have Holden and so forth, and then all the driveways up and down there. And so we have to tie all those into Birch Road. And that is a driver of cost because that determines where we can put the elevation of the road. So lots of big issues to be dealt with. Rob mentioned earlier, he's the design guy, so he's digging into all these details with the team there at CRW, trying to come up with a good solution for all of these things. So, way forward, here we are today. We wanted to reach out. We thought it was a good time to talk to people, bring them up to speed on what we have so far. We are advancing from the 35% level up to the 65% design. We're working through all these issues. We're refining the cost estimate. We're trying to come up with solutions to all of those various things that we need to do. Once we've worked through those issues and have a plan, we hope to come back out another session like this, talk to people, get it out there on the website and let people, noodle on it, think about it, give us feedback, tell us what you think about all those things. The next phase after 65% is to get to 95%. That's really preparing for construction and getting close on all the bid specs. We do need to seek construction funding. That is not part of what CRW is doing. Sorry? Oh, okay. Anyway, we're looking for, the board is out looking for construction funding. In parallel with all of this, if everything does align, we get through all the design issues, we find the funding, then, and I wrote down, I can't really rule out construction in 2023, although that seems highly unlikely that we'll be able to get all the stars to align in that time frame. More likely, it would be 2024 or 2025 before we could get to construction of this. All that remains to be seen based on what we still need to do. So with that, I think I'll end right there. I'll turn it back over to Holly and Justin and let you take it back. Let me quit sharing my screen and I'll sign off here. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, Brian. So as noted earlier, my name is Justin Keene and I am the design project manager and I work for CRW Engineering Group. And yeah, Brian had a great summary of what's been done and you know, kind of how we've gotten to this point. I'm gonna kind of drill into more of what we're looking at for the conceptual improvements and also kind of review in more detail the existing conditions and some of the challenges that we're facing. So here we go. The improvements that are being considered to kind of meet the goals of the project include a new road foundation and paved surface. The next item is a modified roadway alignment, which you know, we see that the existing roadway is not well situated all along the corridor, so the modified roadway alignment would help us better utilize the existing right-of-way and the existing trail and walkway easement. This is the big one: new drainage ditches and culverts, and a reconstructed paved pathway. On to the next slide. So this is actually an overall view of the entire corridor, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So as Brian noted, we've been working on this for quite some time. An additional item that we've completed already is we've gone out and done a full topographic survey and right-of-way survey to develop these. What's being shown here is a detailed topographic base map and right-of-way base map. And as Holly mentioned, we will be posting you know, this presentation online, so you'll be able to take a look at it in more detail. So don't feel like it's probably going to be a little bit overwhelming when I go through this kind of in a quick fashion, but you will have the ability at your own time to sort of check this out in more detail, zoom in and kind of look at these features and ask us more questions if those questions come up at a later time. We also, off to the right, have an existing legend that really spells out all the existing features that are shown here. So the project, as Brian noted, is going to be starting south of Beverly Drive. And this is where the last phase of the project, most of the construction stopped near Beverly Drive. We installed this existing cross culvert. I'm going to actually pull up a markup tool here and just kind of highlight a couple things as we go. Okay. So yeah, this is an existing, this green dash line is the existing culvert. These dash lines here circled, this is the existing gravel edge of roadway. We've got the existing paved pathway here. We've got, like Brian was saying, all sorts of utilities. So underground fiber optic, we have underground gas, overhead, electric and telephone, underground cable. So as part of our survey effort, we've mapped all these features, so we have a real good idea of what we're up against for designing these improvements. The blue line is actually the property line and right-of-way lines. The red dash lines are the existing easements. So that's kind of a summary of some of the existing features. I probably didn't go over all of those, but we'll kind of move along from north to south now. As Brian noted, the Birch Road does meander. It actually, in this case, meanders just over the right-of-way, so on a private property. So this will be a place where we're going to have to shift the roadway such that our improvements are ideally not on private property. The pathway, of course, as many of you know, this is where it crosses from the west side of the roadway to the east side of the roadway, and it follows the east side of the roadway all the way down to Calgan Drive there. Proceeding along, we have 80 feet of right-of-way in this section of the project. And just to kind of review what the right-of-way means, is the right-of-way is owned and maintained, operated by the municipality of Anchorage. In this case, it's maintained by the RRSA, but this would be where the MOA is able to improve that area, and of course where people's individual parcels are, those are owned by the individual owners. At Bristol Drive, you can kind of see how far the existing pathway crosses from the edge of the roadway. Current design standards actually want that crossing to occur closer to where people are going to be stopping on the side street. So this would be kind of a situation where we'd want to make sure we improve that crossing location so that there's not an issue with a vehicle potentially conflicting with a pedestrian or a biker utilizing that pathway. South of Bristol Drive is where the right-of-way is reduced down to 60 feet, but on the west side of the roadway, there is a 20-foot wide trail and walkway easement. And that continues almost to the length of the project, but not quite. And we'll look at that a little bit further south. But yeah, it's unique that we've got 80 feet of right-of-way to the north, and then it reduces down to 60, but there's this trail and walkway easement. Well, the trail and the pathway is actually not installed there. So in this case, the road's actually in the trail and walkway easement, but the actual pathways, on the other side of the road. So it's not the best use of the existing right-of-way and trail and walkway easement. Now, between Bristol Drive and Ridgeview Drive is where we have one of the biggest challenges on the project. And that's because, which many of you probably know driving out there, there's a low point within this section of Birch Road. So drainage flows from Bristol Drive to the south, and then Ridgeview Drive drainage flows to the north. And it gets to a point about right here, the north side of this parcel's driveway, where it just accumulates in the road and ends up ponding really bad and ends up creating a lot of potholes and distress and degradation of that roadway surface. And eventually, sometimes there's enough water here that this parcel ends up putting a little bit of a berm there and directs drainage such that it gets off the road because it's got to go somewhere, but it goes onto his property. What we're showing here, this pink line, is actually, it's not a surveyed feature. It's a Municipality of Anchorage Watershed Management Services existing drainage way, which basically is they map all the drainage ways sort of throughout the city. And this is just their best stab at where the kind of historic drainage occurs, from Birch Road, kind of downstream, downhill, west of the roadway. And it actually, this drainage way, it goes all the way down and discharges. I think it crosses 7 properties, and it discharges into Ridgeview Drive. Now, whether it's completely accurate is questionable. It hasn't been verified, but we know that drainage, that's kind of the natural path it wants to go. So our challenge is, what do we do with this drainage, knowing that we can't get rid of, this home, and we need to somehow, capture or do something with the drainage to improve the road surface. So that's one of the biggest challenges. We've got a couple concepts we're looking at that I will go into a little bit more detail on a couple slides further. But yeah, this is kind of the crux of the entire project, and it's one of those things where there's really not a perfect solution that we're finding, and there probably won't be unless there was some way that we could maybe purchase a home or move somebody out, but that's just not desirable, I don't think, by RRSA or by the MOA either. So it's just something that we're going to have to address the best we can. So moving along to the south, we've got another side street, Ridgeview intersection, and you can see again that existing pathway doesn't cross at an ideal location. We still have that 20-foot trail and walkway easement on the west side of the road. We still have 60 feet of right-of-way. You can see this fiber optic line. It's still sort of smack dab in the right-of-way next to the trail. So we know that we're going to have to deal with that, and that's one of the drivers of the utility relocation costs. Further south, Birch Road is still kind of meandering back and forth within the right-of-way. We've got Holden Drive, another T intersection here. A little portion of Birch Road does spill back onto private property into that existing easement right here. Again, still a bunch of utilities on the east side, some overhead utility crossings. And this is where we get to the southern limits of the project, and we see that existing trail and walkway easement doesn't extend all the way down to Knack Lane and Calgin Drive. So kind of unique, but something that we'll have to address as part of the design. So that's sort of the existing conditions in a nutshell. And again, this will be available online to sort of investigate in further detail. So let's talk a little bit about what we have developed for a conceptual typical section, and it's just what we're throwing out there at this point for a possible solution to meet the goals of the project. This concept typical section is viewing to the north, so looking along Birch Road towards Huffman. And what I'll do is just kind of, again, walk through these elements. It's probably going to be a little bit overwhelming, but you'll be able to view it at a later date as well. If you have any questions, just please reach out to us. We have kind of looking on the right side of the slide, we'll focus. You can see the existing ground. So it's really up high on the east side of the roadway or the right-of-way, and then it really drops down on the left side or the west side of the right-of-way. So we're dealing with a really large elevation change, upwards of 10 feet in some locations. So because of that, when we try to put in ditches, we really need to be able to try to utilize as much space as possible to be able to get sufficient ditches into the design. So we're trying to get 2.5 foot deep ditches on both sides of the road. And this is going to accommodate not only the surface drainage that drains off the roadway, but it will also allow us to put in driveway and side street cross culverts. We're looking at 18-inch diameter culverts, and we need 1 foot minimum of cover to protect those culverts for being able to drive over them safely and not crush them. So that's where that kind of 2.5 foot ditch comes from. Here you can see we've got this existing fiber optic line. It's going to need to get relocated to below the proposed finished grade of the roadway. So that's going to be a big cost that the project's going to have to deal with. Let's take a look at the roadway section in more detail. So what we're looking at is a 24-foot roadway width total, which that would include two 10-foot travel lanes with two 2-foot shoulders. And currently, just kind of for comparison, the existing roadway varies, but the typical lanes total width is between 9 and 11 feet. So in some places it's really narrow, in other places it's a little bit wider, but this is trying to bring up this roadway to you know, a current MOA standard. This roadway width is the same width that we used in phase 1, and it's actually even a little bit less than what the kind of quote unquote design criteria requires. So we would have to get a waiver, but we think we have a pretty good shot at getting that waiver just due to our challenges with right-of-way, as well as our previous project that was constructed in phase 1. On the structural section, so what's shown below the roadway is a pretty robust, you know, deep structural section. This is coming directly from the recommendations from the geotechnical report, and this is to basically satisfy the requirements of the municipality of Anchorage design criteria, and it's really meant to provide a roadway that is going to last over time and not require that continued maintenance that is needed right now. Now, whether you know, the project can handle paying for this robust of a cross section is going to kind of shake out during the design development, but this is what ideally we'd like to put in. It does have insulation, so it's meant to minimize that differential frost heaving throughout the, you know, freeze thaw cycles of our seasons here. And we've used this cross section or sections like this, you know, all over town with a lot of good results. So it should be very long lasting. I think, you know, anything that we do out there is going to be improvement. So whether it gets modified a little bit from this, it'll still be a big upgrade to what's out there right now. The plan for trying to utilize that existing trail and walkway easement would be to relocate the trail from the east side to the west side, and it would be reconstructed at the same width as it currently exists. New pavement, new structural section. It's gonna be less than the roadway, but it's gonna hopefully minimize you know, your cracking and some of the issues you see with that existing pathway now. We're also looking at putting in just a little shoulder, a 1-foot shoulder on either side of the pathway, just to give a little clear area. And then, you know, the goal is to get our improvements to be within this kind of overall section of 20-foot trail and walkway easement and 60-foot right-of-way. And yeah, so that kind of summarizes the conceptual typical section that we're evaluating to use on this project. Let's talk a little bit more about design concepts and features. So the big one that, just to kind of reiterate, is we still are in a conceptual level, but we are pursuing relocating that pathway from the east side to the west side of the roadway. The low point between Ridgeview Drive and Bristol Drive is, like I was saying, the kind of crux of the entire project, and it really is going to come down to try to make an improvement that is not going to be completely perfect, but it is going to provide an improvement, a great improvement of what's out there right now. We've got we drilled into 2 options, and the option 1, which we consider the preferred option, is to install infiltration trenches or a below ground chamber system to allow drainage to infiltrate into the subgrade. So we got those results from the geotech report that did provide some good draining soils below grade. And now we need to kind of work out the details of what that's exactly going to look like, as well as, make sure that what we do propose is economically feasible to construct. We did also look at some interesting options. This option we actually were really looking at, but we considered it kind of not preferred, is to install a cross culvert at the low point, which would direct drainage onto private property. If we were to do this, we would need to, back to that historic drainage way, we would need to get easements all the way downstream, all the way down to Ridgeview, which would be securing easements on private property for 7 properties. And we don't consider that option's really realistic to get 7 property owners on board, and it just doesn't really make sense to get an easement through private property, which would then kind of restrict the property owner's ability to improve. So that's kind of sort of, if there was no properties downstream, installing a cross culvert, that's what you'd do. You would do that and you'd send the drainage downstream, but because we know that drainage is very impactful to private property and that we are conscientious of that, we don't think that's a preferred option, but we did definitely investigate it. Another couple features, of course, is the driveway reconstruction to match into the proposed roadway grade. So when we develop our profile, we'll be doing an iterative design to find the best profile that not only improves the corridor, but also allows us to tie into each driveway in a manner that doesn't have adverse negative impacts. So we got to be conscientious of all these improvements that are already out there that we need to make sure we design around, take into account, and factor in. Last one, which we've kind of already harped on a little bit, is the utility relocation. As part of our 65% design, we'll be putting together a utility conflict report, which basically lays out all the utilities that we think will need to be relocated or modified or adjusted. And we'll put cost to those such that that cost can be factored into the overall total project cost. So just to go over the timeline again, I know Brian kind of went over it a little bit, but we, to sort of bring you up to speed with what we've done, where we want to go, we've completed some preliminary engineering and surveying. We are here at the open house #1, and we thank everybody for attending tonight. We'd like to get through the 65% design probably near the end of the summer here in 2022. And then we'd like to regroup with the public to present the 65% design at the open house #2, which will be in fall 2022. And we'll be sure to, make sure everybody's aware of those dates so they can plan accordingly if they'd like to attend. We'll be then advancing on to 95% design after getting review comments from the MOA and the RRSA and making changes to the 65% design. At that point, we will be very close to finalizing the design, but we haven't got funding yet for the final design and to actually send the project out to bid and for construction. Those items will still be needing funding, and those dates will sort of be determined as that funding comes into place. So I think it's time. I've been doing too much talking here, so I think it's time for questions now. And
Yeah,
Holly,
thank you, Justin. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have about 35 minutes, and I'm sure you all have some questions. So at this point, I want to open it up to questions. We'll I'll do it. If you know how to use the raise your hand function, you can do that, and I will get you in the order that you raise your hand. If you're on the phone, if you come off mute and say something, I'll call on you. You can ask a question. Take comments too, whatever. Who's going to be first? Is there somebody who wants to be first? Hi.
I'll be first.
Is that John?
It is. It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Why don't you dive in?
Yeah, and I'm on the phone, Justin, so I couldn't see these cross sections and such, but it's pretty evident walking down. I walk the dogs down Birch there. It's pretty evident between Ridgeview and if I have my glasses on, I could see the next road, but it's where that white house is. It's pretty evident that that guy really takes a lot of the drainage onto his property there, and that's a real tough situation. Like you say, some sort of dry well, industrial-sized dry well at that point is probably the only viable option, and I'm sure it's very expensive. But Justin, I don't know if you're still listening, but I would like to get in touch with you and get a look at these 35% drawings. I can't see the easements or any of that stuff, but it's a real tough situation. But all I want to say is the road is as bad or not worse as everybody realizes. And the other thing is for people to access the Armand during the winter, that it's not on your little map on the flyer I got in the mail, but there are several days of winter where the Armand is just flat dangerous. So anything that can be done to access Huffman for those of us living south of this area that we're talking would be appreciated, because the Armand has that I don't even know what degree turn going down the hill. It's a corkscrew going down there, and it's just really dangerous. So anyway, I'll quit talking. But Justin, if you're still there, I do want to reach out to you and find out how I can see what you're thinking about, because I'm not on FaceTime or whatever the heck I got to do here, you know. Anyway,
John,
thank you.
Go ahead, Justin. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. Sounds good, John. Yeah. I think hopefully you'll have my email address maybe from the postcard. And yeah, just feel free to reach out to me. We will post this entire presentation too, so that'll help kind of give you a visual of this concept typical section and just the existing features, big map that I went through. But yeah, happy to walk through any questions you might have too, John, in more detail at a later date.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a tough deal. You know, there's no doubt. Yeah. Anyway, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay, we'll go to you next, Jim. Go ahead.
This is Kim Smith. We got the computer and the phone going. So our question was the ditches and culverts that you guys are talking about. I live off Ridgeview, and are they talking about ditches along the side streets or just on Birch Road?
Great question. On this project, we are focusing on Birch Road. However, we understand that when we put ditches in or cross culverts at the side street, like for example on Ridgeview Drive, we may need to do some additional improvements on the side streets to make sure if we're sending drainage down a side street, we need to make sure we kind of can accommodate what's going to happen, you know, whether it be berms or ditches or whatever. Where do you live on Ridgeview Drive? Do you live on the portion
We're 2 houses up from Birch Road.
Okay.
So
Okay, yeah.
2 houses piece. So I'm just wondering, I don't care. I hope they do fix this, and I'm excited that there's, the planning is going on. I'm just curious to know how far up each of the side streets they're going to have to do something, I would assume.
Exactly. Yep. We'll be doing, that's exactly right. We don't know the extents right now, but we will have to do something to tie into the side streets, both with the roadway design and with the ditch design.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Justin, very much. Okay, Joan, you're up next. Go ahead.
Hi. Yes, I'm on the west side on Ridgeview. I'm at the bottom of Ridgeview, and so this concerns me greatly. I purchased the house 4 years ago. It was new construction, and the first winter, my driveway was a total glacier. So my first summer here, I went ahead and had a culvert put in to direct the water away from my driveway, because I was, even with the current situation, my property was taking a tremendous amount of water from above. So 4 years I've been here. I've been driving Birch, the worst part of it that we're discussing. And what I see is that the thing is getting worse every single year. And my concern, I'm hearing the do all. We have our options are to do everything or do nothing. And I don't see how that little section of road will even be there in another 3 years, if that's what it takes to get this project put together. There is absolutely nothing that can be done in the interim, something as stopgap measure just to hold that surface, that awful surface that we at least have, anything that can be done to hold it in place long enough to get to the ultimate solution.
Justin, I'll go to you first, and if you want Brian, I'll go to Brian first. Go ahead, Brian.
Yes, Joan, so that section of Birch, is, you may recall from the comments I gave earlier, that was the first thing we looked at, is how can we do something with the drainage in that particular section? And everything ties together, and it's really hard to just isolate one little section and work on it without a broader solution that is both north of there and south of there. So that was why we went to the more comprehensive corridor study a couple of years ago, is to look at the whole corridor through there. Honestly, what would we do? We thought a lot about this. I've lived in the neighborhood for many years. Kim Smith was just making a few comments. She's been in the neighborhood for many years, many others. We've all been thinking about this issue for 20 plus years, and we have yet to come up with a good solution to it because there's nowhere to put the water. So we could raise the road bed, but all that's going to do is cause more ponding along the edges. There won't be anywhere to move the snow. It doesn't have a good, slick, little, easy solution. The interim solution really is to do more grading. In fact, I think even this week we were going to try and get the road graders out there to grade out those potholes and improve that little section. But, until you can fix the drainage, you can't fix the potholes. And the problem is we have nowhere to put the water. So, I mean, that really is it in a nutshell.
Thanks, Brian. Justin or Joan on this issue, anything else? Okay. Go ahead, Justin. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, it's one of those things where when we did the first analysis, as an engineering company, you want to try to present something that's going to work and that's going to satisfy the goals of the client. And we found very early in that analysis that it's going to be very hard to do anything besides doing something that's going to be very obtrusive and, you know, require a big reconstruction. So I think Brian kind of nailed it. You can kind of just do the best you can with Band-Aids at this point, but to really solve the issue, we've got to get the dishes in, and we've got to get that drainage off the roadway and allow that drainage to go somewhere. So unfortunately, it's not an easy fix until you do more of a reconstruction.
Thank you. Okay.
This is Nancy Todd. Can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead, Nancy.
Okay. My husband and I've lived up here in Crestview now for 42 years, and I agree with not using dearmament some of the times in the winter, and so I use Birch probably 75% of the time for not only safety but convenience. But for those, and I don't know how long Brian's been here, I can remember when that little spot down there was a bog. You couldn't go through it when it was this time of year, and they've done a lot of work, and so it's 1,000% better than it was, even as bad as it is. So whatever they did temporarily, and yes, the water's a problem. But I have another concern, and they're talking about the safety issue and traffic flow. If we end up with what we've got on the other end of phase one, which it's a nice paved road, and that's about all I can say that's positive about it. They took out all the trees, all the vegetation, planted ugly little trees that I guess have grown, I don't know. So I'm hoping they're looking at, do they have to destroy all the flora that's out there while they're doing this project to give us a paved road that is going to become a speedway, and what is going to be done once it's paved and once it's really straight and once everybody can quote, see, unquote, and I can see fine on it now. Winter and summer, people are very courteous. We all go very slow of necessity. We're not going to have to do that anymore, and I think that's an issue that people need to think about. Is just, it's going to be a 20, 30, 40, 50, it's not going to be a 20, be a 30 or 40 mile racetrack through there. And I don't know how they plan to solve that problem. I agree with the water issue and that those have to be done, but are we creating another safety issue by making it, and like you say, it's all or nothing, and I guess that's not a lot of a choice. And I guess my other concern is, you know, the 2.7 million sounds like a lot. I have a feeling it's probably far greater than that at this point. But I appreciate and hopefully the next meeting can be in person. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, Nancy. Just, you know, by way of my background, I have been in the neighborhood for 30 years and have seen a lot of those improvements you've talked about. And predating me in the neighborhood, I've heard all kinds of horror stories about how the roads really were impassable this time of year, and we've come a long way in terms of making the roads more passable. Just in terms of the biggest drawback in my mind is the speeding issue. And this comes up time and time again. People that I've talked to who are not in favor of moving forward with a project like this usually cite speeding as their number one reason why they don't want that. And there's no ideal solution. Either we fix the road or we don't. So, you know, as the old saying goes, what's the opposite of a speed bump? Well, is a pothole. So the potholes really do a good job of slowing everybody down, as you point out.
That's true.
So you know, looking at potential traffic calming measures is something I think we want to think about while we go through this whole process. And we haven't really dug into that issue quite yet, but it is in the back of my mind, and I think your comment is well taken that a better road just speeds everybody up. In terms of the vegetation, it's really an unfortunate side effect of what we're looking at doing is that a lot of it will be gone. You have to widen the road. You have to provide the ditching, as Justin was talking about. That was one reason why we wanted to show that cross section. This is really what it would look like. It would really be a continuation of what we did in phase 1 down south, going south of Beverly down to Calge and Naknek, vegetation would be missing. When we're done, we would do our best to replant some trees. We're all into advice on that. What would you like to see? How could we do it? Maybe we could even factor it into some of the design drawings as we go along. But to improve the road, we're going to have to widen the right-of-way, or the right-of-way doesn't change, but we're going to have to widen the traveled way as we go through there and reconstruct it. So things will grow back over time, not the way they are today, but that's the reality of what we're talking about doing. And that's why we're having these open houses, is to get feedback. I know a lot of people, probably the number 2 reason I hear about not doing a project like this is you'll lose a lot of the vegetation along there. So yeah, those are big concerns. And you know, we hear you, and you know, I love the trees too, and I don't like speeders either. So trying to figure out a way. Oh, ultimately, by the way, I want to mention one thing that I've heard a number of times from a former board member who happened to be in law enforcement. And speeding is really a law enforcement issue. It isn't a road service area issue. But they kind of go hand in hand, and we need to be making road designs that help to make sure we're not encouraging people to drive faster than they should be, because nobody in a neighborhood like this wants that. So anyway, thank you for the comment.
Okay, Maria, you're up next. Thank you for your comment in the chat, but it's your turn to speak too.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I would just like to note about that speeding. Cars are speeding really badly over that bad part of the Birch Road. I think that we need a good road, but maybe if the road is curved like it is now, that makes cars slow down. And also the fact that the road is very narrow, usually cars slow down very much, because usually one car lets another car pass and they wait on a side. So this is what slows them down. But those huge potholes, some cars are really flying over them. They go really very, very fast. So this doesn't slow. If somebody doesn't want to slow down, those crazy ones would go very fast. I had question. I don't understand this issue really, but I just had idea. What if the pathway, the one which you planned to do on the west side of Birch, what if you first made a pathway which comes with the ditch, and the grading was made just to slope the road towards the ditch, you know, a little bit higher on east and little lower on west, so all the water on the most problematic part would just run down to the ditch. So before you do all the road and everything around that would resolve your issue with where to put the water. It would go to the ditch. What do you think?
Justin, I'll go to you first. Did you get all those ideas?
No, thank you very much for the comments, Maria. I'm not quite visualizing exactly your concept. Could you say it maybe one more time, and I'll try to kind of visualize it a little bit better.
Sorry. Okay, on this picture which you have here.
Yep.
You draw the new pathway which goes west of Birch.
Yep.
And between the pathway and the road, there is a 2.5 inch feet ditch.
Yep.
So if you first made that pathway with the ditch, just because of the ditch, and this road where there is this red and gray car, that road, normally the road is higher in the middle and it slopes down to the sides, so the water would run down. But we don't have eastern ditch right now, because there is this hill, there is this existing ground, so there is no such ditch. The water cannot go there. So what if we made the western ditch and the road would slope whole from the east to west. It would be sloped toward the ditch.
I got you now.
Yes, like that. Yes, that's my point. So
Yeah.
if you need to resolve this, then this would take the water away from the road. Maybe we would have little less potholes there. Would that be doable?
I mean, I think it's definitely worth. I see what you're saying now. Is instead of doing like a traditional crown on the roadway where you have ditches
Yes.
on both sides, you just slope everything to one side, and the ditch could be on just the west side between the pathway and the roadway.
I don't mean like definitely like this. This is just the temporary solution. If you mean that, I
okay.
understand that you need to do everything what you plan. I just meant that if we are going to wait for another 2 years or how much for all these road reparations, that what if we did this ditch and that little slope, and that would kind of heal us for those 2 years until we wait, so we could have usable road, and you wouldn't have to grade it so often then, because you know it doesn't last really almost anything. Like after each rain, there are new potholes. So maybe it could be even cheaper for you.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a good thought and something we can chat with Brian a little bit more about. Yeah, and whether you could do that with kind of little impact to, you know, a full reconstruction, that might be something that's possible. It's a good thought, Maria.
Thanks.
Thanks so much, Maria.
Thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Any other questions?
John, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I'll say something.
Well, say something.
Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, this is John Todd. I have a couple comments I'd like. The gravel road needs improvement. However, this can be accomplished by improving the drainage, and that's been well thought of and as a requirement to begin with. Our problem with it is destroying all the rest of the area, like the phase one. It's a sorry, ugly mess over there. And they have one little group of trees they left down there and I've heard, well, we're going to plant some more trees. And they'll be back in a few years. They'll be back in 50 to 100 years. And why destroy this kind of vegetation that's been with us, and it'll never be back once it's taken away. I've built a few roads and developed a subdivision or two, and I'll admit I am not an engineer, but a 114 lot subdivision with a few miles of road down in the Kenai, it's been in place 47 years and has not had one major problem with it of anything. And I agree it did have a good drainage on it. I would like to see this road constructed in the same identical place that the present road is, taking into account that, yes, if it's out of the easement, it needs to be moved in a foot or two. And the width of that road can be made adequate enough, even with your charts you have distributed here. And I'm going back to something else that's not quite related, but if you've been to New England or Kentucky, those paved roads are built right up to the old growth brush, vegetation, and trees, and they do not seem to be a problem. And some of those roads have probably been built up well over 100 years, and they do not appear to have any problem at all. I drove lots of them with single-family car and also a large motor home, towing a car, and it can be done. Maybe the municipality needs to change this procedure a little bit, other than put a 40 or 50 foot road through there. I know that's not what's on there, but you got a 24-foot road and go straight down from there and build it up till it takes care. And I know you mentioned it, but I'd like to know what the underground conditions are, you know, and I guess you run those test holes to see what that is under the road. That may even take more build up than 4 feet, but whatever that build up it takes to get the road satisfactory can be done in my mind. And I basically oppose most of the developments you mentioned. You'd have to move very few easements, as I see it, or other utilities that are underground by maintaining all that work on the road and reduce the cost. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, John. I think that was John. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I would like to comment as well. And John, I pretty much totally agree with what you were saying there about why can't we keep the trees like they do. And I was just back east myself and driving on some of those roads you're talking about where the trees are right there, and for that matter, the utility poles next to the road. And a couple of things. One is those roads were built quite a while ago when you were allowed to do that. Today, you're really not. And we kind of ran into a brick wall on the phase 1 improvements that we were looking at. We were looking at something a lot less obtrusive, and it was more in the character of the neighborhood. And we were pretty much told you can't do that by the municipality. So realistically, if we do want to fix a section of road, we're going to have to build it to municipal standards to the best of our ability. And that involves, you know, widening, getting the ditching in. Maybe Maria has an idea we can work with a little bit. But yeah, unfortunately, the city doesn't bend on that sort of thing, as we found out before. And yeah, so it's a matter, if we want to improve the road, fix the drainage, fix the potholes, we need to do a more comprehensive solution to be able to do that. Having said all of that, I think that, you know, clearly one of our takeaways is that we're going to be looking for creative ways to save as much of the vegetation and the trees as we can. And yeah, point well taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, I'm stuck. John, do you have one final thing to say? I want to make sure everybody who wants to talk has an opportunity, but anything else?
Was that Brian just now talking?
Oh, yes, sorry, I remember
Okay,
you're on the
thank
phone.
you.
That was Brian. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. All right. We have about, I would say, 5 more minutes of questions. We don't have to go the full time, but I want to see if anybody else has anything you want to ask or comment. Okay.
This is Kim Smith again.
Hello?
Can you?
Okay, hold on. The person at 748, you go first.
Okay, I just have a question. As far as funding this is going to be with grants and such. Are we to that part yet, or should I wait till the next meeting?
No, we can talk about it now. I think Brian's been thinking about it. Go ahead, Brian.
Sure. Yeah, well, 2.7 million, or if, as somebody said, it could be more than that, is way beyond what we can afford to do ourselves. So realistically, it would be a grant. We've been scratching our heads over the infrastructure bill in Congress. It was passed, the federal legislation, and how we might be able to tap into that. We haven't figured that one out yet, but I can assure you we are going aggressively trying to figure out a way to, you know, get our little pot of money to fall from that bill. We're also talking to our legislators. The state, you know, a year ago was dirt poor. Today they seem to have money. how things can change in a short period of time. So looking at both the state and the federal government for ways we might be able to find funding for it. But yeah, if you have any ideas, you know, catch me offline. We're all ears about ways to find funding.
Maybe a lemonade sale.
Yeah, or win the lottery,
Brian.
you know.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I think there was one more person trying to ask a question or make a comment.
Hi, my name's
Go ahead.
Maria Robinson, and I live on Ridgeview at the corner of Birch, right where all the potholes are. So I'm listening in tonight for both my husband and I wanted to clarify, did you guys say that you're considering moving the trail from the east to the west, or is that a for sure thing?
Well,
with this
nothing at this point is for sure.
It's not.
But realistically, we lose 20 feet of right of way south of Bristol Drive. So to take advantage of that, there's not enough room in the 60 feet left to fit in both the road and the trail. So realistically, we need to take advantage of that 20-foot trail right away to fit everything together and to have continuity from north to south all the way down Birch Road. So, I mean, we haven't come up with any other solution at this point. Will we continue to look at it? Sure, we will. But at this point, that seems like the best option to move forward if we want to do anything.
Okay. And you'll be posting what that'll look like shortly?
Right. At this point, what I don't know if you were able to see the video, but Justin had a nice diagram of all of the different features that exist today along this right of way. We don't have a road designed and on that diagram yet. We're working on that. That is what we're trying to get to in moving from 35% to 65% design. But Justin's diagram shows a lot of those features that we're trying to deal with, including the 20-foot trail easement along that section of road. So if you haven't been able to see the figures here online tonight, they'll be posted to the website and you can take a look whenever you have a chance, and they'll be up there, I think, for the long haul, and you'll be welcome to look at them.
Okay, yes, because our fence runs parallel to the pathway, and so our concern is that the road will be just a few feet from our fence if that happens. So I guess we'll get a look at the photos when we can, because yes, I'm on the phone and I wasn't able to log on with Microsoft.
Yeah, so what we'll do is everyone will receive, if we have your email address, you'll receive an email likely tomorrow. It's not going to be tonight. I'm sorry, Brian, it won't happen tonight, but it will happen tomorrow. We'll send out an email letting you all know when the website has been updated to get these materials. And Maria, like Brian said, you're going to get a good picture of existing conditions right now. And in the fall is when there'll be an opportunity to have a more detailed picture of what the proposal is gonna be at that point. So
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Okay,
I'm going to start wrapping it up here. Okay, so we're taking notes tonight. We have this recording. The CRW design team, they're going to take all your questions and comments and they're going to factor it into how the project moves forward. Michelle is going to type my email into the chat box so that you have direct access to it. If you have any comments or questions, or if you need any help with anything, accessing the website, getting in touch with anybody, please reach out to us. We'll help you. all the project documents and meeting materials will be available on the website. I think Michelle put that in the chat too, but she can do it again. Again, that we're not going to have everything uploaded until tomorrow, and we always send out an email notice when we do that, so that you'll get notified when that happens. If you're not on the email list, if you know you're not on the email list, I highly recommend going to the website and signing up for the email list so that when we make updates to the project website or when we schedule the next meetings, that you'll get an actual notice of your inbox that that's happening. Just as typical, if you can add us to your safe senders list, you'll always get those emails. It won't go to your spam. Yeah, and Justin's pulling up the website here to show you how to do it. This is the website. We'll have it easily accessible and obvious, likely on the right-hand side. And then if you scroll to the bottom, yeah, that's how you sign up. You click on the bottom. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Any questions? Any final nuts and bolts questions?
I got one.
Okay.
It's not a question. It's just an alert. It's raining money from Washington right now. So if anybody knows anybody or knows a cousin of anybody, I'd get a hold of them, because this is not going to be cheap if we do it.
No, and I would recommend to continue to move the project forward, because John's right. There's a lot of infrastructure money available, and I know they're going to be looking for projects that are ready to go. So.
And let me just add, if you have any ideas in that regard, please reach out to me. We're all into ideas right now about how to get funding. So.
Brian, is this Brian?
Yes, this is Brian.
So is your contact on this thing I got in the mail, or?
No, but you know what? If you email Holly or Justin, they'll make sure the information gets to me, and I'll be sure to contact you back when that gets through. So.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, we're pretty accessible to you if you reach out. We know there was a lot of information tonight, and we're here to help answer questions as you go through it all when it's on the website. I guess I'll pass it to you, Brian, for any final words.
Well, I just really appreciate everybody coming out tonight, and it looks like just about everybody was able to hang in there till the end, and really appreciate it on such a beautiful April evening. More to follow. You know, sign up for the email list, go to the website, reach out to me or Holly or Justin or whoever you would want to. We're here for you, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to moving this project along. So thank you, Holly, thank you, Justin, and the CRW team for putting this whole evening together. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.